Have you ever wondered why the most successful women seem somehow different? It's not that they were born confident. It's not that they were luckier. It's that they understand something most of us were never taught: success requires more than what appears on the surface. In interviews, they share inspiring stories: "I just worked hard and believed in myself." They talk about passion and perseverance. They emphasize the importance of women supporting women. All of this is true. But it's not enough. Because behind those beautiful stories lies a more complex truth: they've learned the unspoken rules that society doesn't want to acknowledge. They've developed skills that tradition deems inappropriate for women. They haven't become cruel or lost their femininity. They've simply expanded their toolkit. They've learned to be both gentle and firm, both collaborative and competitive, both kind and decisive, depending on what the situation demands. And here are the 9 most important principles they apply, lessons drawn from real experience. Secret number 1: they act before they feel ready. The human brain is designed to keep us safe in a world that no longer exists. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors faced real dangers: wild beasts, natural disasters, hostile tribes. In that context, extreme caution could save lives. But in the modern world, this ancient protective mechanism often becomes the greatest obstacle to growth. Every time we prepare to do something important, present to the board of directors, start a business, negotiate a major contract, the brain automatically activates its danger warning system. It can't distinguish between real danger and psychological danger like failure, rejection, or being judged. The result is a constant stream of thoughts: not enough information yet. Too many uncontrollable variables. What if I fail? Maybe I should wait a bit longer. Maybe I should prepare more thoroughly. Maybe I should wait until I feel more confident. Confident women have learned to recognize and overcome this biological programming. They understand that the feeling of not being ready isn't accurate information about their actual capabilities. It's the response of a system designed for a completely different world. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this context, making the unconscious conscious means recognizing and challenging self-imposed limitations. The fear of not being good enough is often just the shadow of perfectionism, a sophisticated defense mechanism that prevents them from risking failure. It operates on the logic: if I never try, I never fail. If I never fail, I can maintain the illusion that I could succeed if I wanted to. This psychological trap protects the ego from injury but simultaneously prevents any possibility of real growth. It creates an artificial comfort zone, comfortable because it avoids risk, but artificial because it's not based on actual achievement. Confident women break this cycle by understanding a difficult truth: failure in the modern world rarely has the catastrophic consequences the brain warns about. Business failure doesn't mean starvation. Being rejected in negotiations doesn't mean being expelled from society. Making mistakes in presentations doesn't mean career death. More importantly, they understand the paradoxical relationship between action and confidence. Society teaches us a wrong formula: confidence rightward arrow, action rightward arrow, success. But in reality, the law works completely in reverse: action rightward arrow, experience rightward arrow, learning rightward arrow, gradually increasing confidence. Anna, chief financial officer of a multinational corporation, describes this process. 10 years ago, before every major presentation, I felt like I was going to die. Heart pounding, hands shaking, wanting to vomit. Now, with presentations of equal importance, I feel exactly the same. The difference is I no longer view those feelings as danger signals. I view them as signals that my body is preparing for peak performance. This shift from feeling signal danger to feeling signal opportunity is one of the most profound psychological changes confident women undergo. It doesn't happen overnight but through hundreds of small practice sessions, each time choosing action over delay. Secret number 2, They steal energy from people they admire. Modern society has a strange contradiction about authenticity. On one hand, we celebrate uniqueness and encourage people to just be yourself. On the other hand, we constantly consume content about successful people, learn from idols, and model those we admire through social media. This contradiction creates a deep sense of guilt in many people when they realize they're copying others. They worry that learning from others will make them lose their individuality, that they'll become fake copies instead of authentic originals. Confident women don't have this contradiction. They understand that learning from others is not only natural behavior but also the smartest strategy for development. They don't see this as stealing or lacking character, but as accessing humanity's collective repository of knowledge and experience. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a deep layer of consciousness containing behavioral patterns, symbols, and energies that all humans share. Within it exist archetypes, universal energy patterns like the leader, the warrior, the wise one, the queen. According to Jung, everyone is born with the ability to access all these archetypes. They are part of our evolutionary heritage. However, not everyone knows how to activate and express them effectively. This is exactly what confident women do systematically. When they observe a successful female CEO, they're not just learning from that individual. They're learning how to access and express the leader archetype within themselves. When they study a skilled negotiator, they're learning how to activate the warrior archetype. Sarah, marketing director of a Fortune 500 company, describes, "I spent 6 months just observing how a female CEO ran meetings. Not the content, I focused on the methods. How she used silence. How she sat. How she reacted when interrupted." But importantly, Sarah didn't stop at observing the surface. She analyzed why these behaviors were effective. Speaking slowly with pauses not only created an impression of control but also forced listeners to focus more. This process requires a high level of self-awareness and discipline. Confident women don't stop at a single source of learning. They build a library of behaviors from many different people, then combine the best elements to create their own unique style. The result isn't a mechanical copy of anyone, but an optimized version of themselves. They still retain their core personality, their fundamental values. But they've learned to express all of this more effectively in different professional contexts. Jung called this process individualization, not becoming someone completely different, but becoming the fullest, most developed version of oneself. Authenticity doesn't mean never changing, Jung wrote. Authenticity means always developing toward becoming the person you have the potential to become. The final important point is that confident women understand this learning process never ends. They're always observing, always adjusting, always looking for ways to improve. They don't see this as a sign of lack of confidence but as evidence of commitment to continuous development. Secret number 3, they have an enemy list in their head. The modern self-help industry worth billions of dollars is built on a seemingly noble premise: happiness and success come from focusing on the positive, eliminating the negative. We're taught to forgive and forget, move past the past, don't let anyone occupy space in your head rent-free. This advice sounds noble and spiritual, repeated by countless experts and influencers. It creates an idealized image of successful people as modern saints, always positive, never holding grudges, always forgiving and loving. But this advice ignores a fundamental and immutable truth about human psychology: strong emotions, including those we're taught are negative, contain enormous amounts of energy. The problem isn't whether we have these emotions, because they're a natural and unavoidable part of human experience. The problem is how we perceive and use them. Jung understood that the shadow, the part containing all aspects of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge, including anger, hatred, jealousy, desire for revenge, cannot and should not be completely eliminated. Instead, these energies need to be recognized, accepted, and transformed into more constructive forms of expression. Jung called this process enantiodromia, the transformation of polar opposites into each other. In psychological context, this means pain can become strength, rejection can become determination, humiliation can become motivation to prove oneself. Confident women have instinctively understood this principle. They don't try to become saints who never feel anger, pain, or desire for revenge. Instead, they learn to harness these powerful emotions as fuel for success. This process begins with systematically recording and preserving hurts. Jennifer, who built a $500 million company, keeps a small black journal she calls her motivation notebook. In it are recorded the criticisms, rejections, and particularly hurtful underestimations she's received. You don't have the leadership qualities necessary to manage a large team. HR director at first company, 2008. This idea is too ambitious for your actual experience and abilities. I advise you to find a more suitable role. First investor rejection, 2010. Jennifer doesn't read this list daily or live in a constant state of anger. Instead, she accesses it in moments when she needs additional motivation, when facing particularly difficult decisions, when feeling like giving up during tough times. Every time I reread those lines, I ask myself one simple question, Jennifer explains. Am I going to let them be right or wrong? The answer is always no, never. And that gives me all the energy I need to continue, to push harder, to work more diligently. When we feel threatened, rejected, or underestimated, the body releases a complex series of stress hormones including cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. These hormones are designed to provide energy for emergency action. In modern, civilized society, we can't run away or attack those who hurt us. But we can redirect the stress hormone energy into building personal success. Success becomes the most subtle, elegant, and effective form of fighting, not aimed at harming anyone but at proving our worth and capabilities. Most importantly, confident women understand that the ultimate goal of using energy from hurt isn't revenge or harming others. The goal is building a successful, meaningful life that makes positive contributions. Anger and hurt are just means, psychological tools to overcome difficult times. Secret number 4. They fake it until they make it. One of the most common and harmful misconceptions about confidence is the idea that it must be natural and authentic from the start. Society teaches us that if we have to fake confidence, then it's not real. We're advised to just be yourself as if the self is a fixed, immutable entity, completely determined from birth. This notion is not only wrong but extremely limiting. It prevents millions of people from developing their latent abilities because they believe anything that doesn't feel natural isn't authentic. Jung had a deeper understanding of human psychological nature. He recognized that the self isn't a static, fixed thing, but a dynamic process, continuously developing and changing throughout life. He distinguished between the persona, the social interface we wear in different contexts, and the true being. But importantly, he didn't view the persona as something fake or deceptive. Instead, Jung saw the persona as a necessary and natural interface between the individual and the surrounding world. Just as we wear different clothes for different occasions, no one calls wearing a suit to work fake just because they wear jeans at home. We also need different personas to function effectively in various social environments. Lisa, now CEO of a billion-dollar tech company, tells of her early days as sales director. I remember sitting in my car before every major client meeting, looking in the rearview mirror and practicing my opening line. I practiced how to shake hands, firm but not too strong. I practiced how to look directly into their eyes without avoiding. For the first 6 months, every client meeting was a complete and meticulously arranged performance. Lisa felt like she was living in a play, afraid that people would discover that she wasn't really as confident as her exterior showed. But Lisa persisted, partly due to financial pressure, partly due to curiosity about her own capabilities. And something miraculous happened, though not immediately. After about 8 months, I realized I no longer needed to perform, she says. My way of speaking, posture, even my way of thinking had gradually changed. I had actually become the person I once had to pretend to be. The human brain has an amazing characteristic: it can't distinguish between feeling confident and acting confident if the behavior is repeated frequently enough and receives positive feedback from the environment. Jung called this process integrating the persona into the being. The persona is no longer something worn from the outside like clothing, but becomes a natural and organic part of the person, a way of expressing potentials that were always there but hadn't been fully developed. The final result of this process is confidence built on a foundation of real experience and proven capabilities, rather than just based on emotions or vague beliefs. Secret number 5, they view other women as competitors, not sisters. Modern popular culture is saturated with messages about sisterhood and the importance of lifting each other up. We frequently hear about how women need to support, encourage, and accompany each other on the journey to conquer career heights. The reality in many highly competitive professional environments is much more complex and subtle than this idealized image. Jung had deep insights into the phenomenon he called projection, the natural human tendency to see in others those qualities, characteristics, or abilities they haven't fully developed in themselves, or aspects they can't accept about themselves. Rebecca, CEO of a management consulting firm with over 500 employees, admits frankly, "I track the careers and achievements of every woman in the industry with a level of detail and frequency far exceeding how my husband follows his favorite sports team. I know when they get promoted, what their salary and benefits packages are, what leadership style they apply, what major projects they oversee." Confident women have learned to recognize, acknowledge, and manage this complex consciously and effectively. Instead of denying or feeling guilty about these natural competitive feelings, they accept them as part of human nature and use them as valuable information about what they want to achieve. They transform competition from something harmful and destructive into a tool for development and learning. Instead of trying to diminish or sabotage other women's success, they use it as case studies to understand what's needed to reach the next level. They understand that in many industries and organizations, the objective reality is that resources and opportunities have certain limitations. There are only so many board seats, so many CEO positions, so many spots in leadership development programs. Most importantly, confident women recognize that feeling competitive with other women doesn't make them bad feminists or non-supportive sisters. This is human nature, and acknowledging and managing these feelings healthily is actually more constructive than suppressing or denying them. Secret number 6, they know how to use appearance as a weapon. Jung spoke of embodied consciousness, the idea that body and mind aren't separate but influence each other deeply and continuously. Confident women understand that how they present themselves physically not only affects how they feel about themselves but also powerfully influences how others react and interact with them. They don't view paying attention to appearance as conforming to beauty standards or trying to please others. Instead, they understand that in the imperfect world we live in, image presentation is a powerful communication tool and competitive advantage that would be foolish to ignore. Margaret, a senior legal director at an international law firm, explains her approach: "I have different suits for different types of meetings and I choose them like a chess master chooses moves. Deep red when I need to project power and decisiveness in a difficult negotiation. Navy blue when I need to build trust and credibility with new clients. Gray when I need to blend in and not stand out too much in a group of male colleagues." They study color psychology seriously. They know red activates feelings of energy and attention, can create perceptions of power and confidence. Navy blue is associated with trust, authority, and professionalism. Black conveys sophistication and formality. They don't choose colors based on personal preference but based on the psychological impact they want to create. They understand the psychology of power dressing, how clothing affects not only others' perceptions but also the wearer's own psychological state. Most importantly, confident women maintain ethical boundaries in how they use appearance as a tool. They don't manipulate or deceive, they simply present themselves in the most effective way possible. Secret number 7, They have a secret self that only they know. Jung spoke of the diversity and complexity of the human soul, the idea that all of us contain many different possibilities, aspects, and potentials within ourselves. Most people only develop and express a small part of their full personality spectrum. But confident women have learned to consciously develop and access what might be called a strategic self, a version of themselves capable of becoming extremely tough, decisive, and calculating when the situation demands. This self isn't the same as malice, manipulation, or meaningless cruelty. It's not about hurting others for pleasure or resentment. Rather, it's about the ability to make extremely difficult decisions without being paralyzed by emotion, the ability to protect their own interests and those they care about when threatened. Jennifer, founder of a successful tech company, recalls a pivotal moment in her career. "I had a business partner I trusted completely. We had been friends for many years. But when the company really started taking off, he began making moves to push me out and gain majority control. I discovered he had been meeting with investors behind my back, questioning my abilities as a leader." Jennifer continues, "The old me would have tried to talk it through, to understand his perspective, to find a compromise that worked for everyone. But I realized that kindness and cooperation wouldn't save my company in this situation. I had to become completely ruthless. I gathered evidence of his deception, secured the loyalty of key employees, and systematically outmaneuvered him until he had no choice but to leave with minimal equity." In Jung's theory, this is an example of shadow integration, not suppressing or denying darker aspects of personality, but learning to consciously access them when appropriate. The shadow isn't inherently evil, it simply contains aspects of the self that society or personal conditioning has labeled as unacceptable. Secret number 8, they gather information about people like detectives. One of the least acknowledged skills of confident women is their ability to gather and process information about others with the accuracy and thoroughness of professional intelligence analysts. This isn't about privacy invasion or malicious manipulation, this is about social intelligence, strategic preparation, and understanding human motivation. Carol, a senior marketing director at a global corporation, explains her approach. "Before every important meeting or negotiation, I conduct extensive research on everyone who will participate. Not just their official titles and professional backgrounds, I want to understand their personality type, communication style, pressure points, motivations." She continues, "For example, before a major contract negotiation, I discovered that the other side's lead negotiator was passionate about environmental sustainability, had recently gone through a divorce, and was under pressure from the board to deliver quick results. This information helped me frame our proposal in terms that aligned with his values, avoid topics that might be sensitive due to his personal situation." This skill extends beyond formal business contexts. Confident women often maintain sophisticated mental databases about colleagues, clients, competitors, and others in their professional networks. They pay attention to behavioral patterns, remember details about personal circumstances, and track changes in attitudes or circumstances over time. Importantly, confident women use this information ethically. They don't gather intelligence to harm or exploit others, but to communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, create better outcomes for everyone involved, and protect themselves from potential problems. Secret number 9, they view money as a symbol of power, not just a means. Confident women have a fundamentally different relationship with money than what society typically teaches or expects. They don't view money just as a tool for shopping or ensuring basic security. Instead, they understand money as a symbol and means of freedom, autonomy, influence, and the ability to shape their environment according to their vision. Jung wrote about money as a symbolic manifestation of life energy, vitality converted into tangible form. In modern society, money represents the ability to transform ideas into reality, influence outcomes, create change. Rachel, a self-made entrepreneur with 8-figure net worth, explains her perspective. Money isn't about buying luxury items or showing off wealth. Money is about having the power to say no to things I don't want, the power to say yes to opportunities one want, and the power to execute my vision without having to ask permission from others or compromise my values for financial survival. This perspective manifests in how they approach salary negotiations, business deals, and financial planning. They don't just consider the amount, they consider what that amount means in terms of respect, recognition, and relative position. They also maintain financial independence as a strategic priority, not just personal preference. Having their own resources means having the ability to make decisions based on what's right rather than what's financially necessary. It means being able to leave toxic situations, invest in long-term opportunities, and support causes they care about. They also understand the psychological dimensions of wealth and success. They recognize that in a society that often undervalues women's contributions, financial success serves as undeniable proof of capability and worth. These 9 secrets reveal an uncomfortable truth: confident women don't succeed by becoming better versions of what society expects from women. They succeed by learning the real rules of power and applying them intelligently and strategically, even when those rules contradict idealized images of how women should behave. These strategies aren't comfortable to discuss because they contradict many deep beliefs about how women should act. They challenge the idea that success should come naturally, that authenticity means never changing, that women should always support each other unconditionally. But this is the reality of how power actually works in the world we actually live in, not the world we wish existed. Confident women have learned to navigate this reality effectively while maintaining their core values and ultimately using their success to create positive impact. Jung understood that integrity requires integration of all aspects of personality and experience, including those aspects society considers unacceptable for certain groups. For women, this often means developing the ability for strategic thinking, taking calculated risks, competitive behavior, and sometimes even ruthlessness. The important point is that these women don't abandon compassion, cooperation, empathy, or other traditional feminine strengths. Instead, they expand their toolkit to include the full range of human capabilities. They can be simultaneously nurturing and strategic, collaborative and competitive, generous and protective of their own interests, depending on what the situation requires. Perhaps most importantly, they understand that sharing these insights, however uncomfortable, is necessary to help other women develop similar capabilities. As long as these strategies remain hidden, they can only benefit a few. When they're understood and discussed openly, they can become tools for broader empowerment and social change. The real revolution happens not when oppressed groups politely ask for better treatment, but when they develop the power to demand respect and create change themselves. These 9 secrets represent pieces of that power, not pretty, not comfortable, but effective in the world as it actually exists rather than the world as we wish it were. These 9 secrets reveal an uncomfortable truth: confident women don't succeed by becoming better versions of what society expects from women. They succeed by learning the real rules of power and applying them intelligently and strategically, even when those rules contradict idealized images of how women should behave. These strategies aren't comfortable to discuss because they contradict many deep beliefs about how women should act. They challenge the idea that success should come naturally, that authenticity means never changing, that women should always support each other unconditionally. But this is the reality of how power actually works in the world we actually live in, not the world we wish existed. Confident women have learned to navigate this reality effectively while maintaining their core values and ultimately using their success to create positive impact. Jung understood that integrity requires integration of all aspects of personality and experience, including those aspects society considers unacceptable for certain groups. For women, this often means developing the ability for strategic thinking, taking calculated risks, competitive behavior, and sometimes even ruthlessness. The important point is that these women don't abandon compassion, cooperation, empathy, or other traditional feminine strengths. Instead, they expand their toolkit to include the full range of human capabilities. They can be simultaneously nurturing and strategic, collaborative and competitive, generous and protective of their own interests, depending on what the situation requires. Perhaps most importantly, they understand that sharing these insights, however uncomfortable, is necessary to help other women develop similar capabilities. As long as these strategies remain hidden, they can only benefit a few. When they're understood and discussed openly, they can become tools for broader empowerment and social change. The real revolution happens not when oppressed groups politely ask for better treatment, but when they develop the power to demand respect and create change themselves. These 9 secrets represent pieces of that power, not pretty, not comfortable, but effective in the world as it actually exists rather than the world as we wish it were.